Hello and welcome back. What are we talking about today? What's on your mind? I would love to know. How are you doing? Life treating you well? If so, fantastic. I'm happy for you. If not, I hope it gets better for you. Life is hard as it is. I hope it gets a little bit better, or a whole lot better, actually. Why reserve it to a little bit better when it could be orders of magnitude better? Who knows? I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just a face on the internet. Actually, for most of you, I can't even say most of you. For some of you, I'm not. You know me in person. Anyway, so what are we talking about today? You don't know, but you might. I don't know what I'm going to title this video yet. Stay tuned for that. Well, you don't have to stay. I don't have a mirror here. Just imagine I'm looking into a mirror. Stay tuned for that. I'm the one staying tuned for it. They already know. They're reading the title. They clicked on the video. What's wrong with you? Anyway, excuse me. Today we're talking about how to develop a good character. And you may be thinking, why do I care about this? It goes back into the storytelling aspects that I've been covering for the last few videos. Now, I did do a video about D&D specifically, and you may notice that I am wearing the same shirt. Again, I record in batches, and I've got a bunch of ideas for what to record, and I'm putting it all together as I go. So this is recorded on the same day that probably the last two videos that you've seen of me talking have been recorded on. Pretty much back to back. Though this one I took some extra time to noodle around some solidifying features that I want to talk about. There are a number of articles and a number of authors that have written a number of articles on how to write good characters. But a lot of that is very verbose, and a lot of that is for books. Now, absolutely, if you're looking to write a book, do more research, find out what other authors that you admire do for their methodologies to develop their characters. Maybe study their works a little bit more. Instead of just reading them for enjoyment, you can analyze them, go that way. If you're here, you're probably looking for the Cliffs Notes. You're probably looking for the post-it note, like checkbox that you've got for each character, and kind of move your way through that so that you can get moving with it. And this is relevant for mid-stories, which are a little bit longer than short stories, but they're not full-on novels. They could be used for short stories depending on what you're looking to do with them. And most of this is probably not going to be entirely based with the idea of a protagonist or a primary antagonist in mind. This is mainly for secondary characters or maybe even tertiary, which would be the third position outside of that if you don't know what tertiary means. So the first point to cover is that you should really look to develop characters that share interests with you. And depending on the plot line of your story, this could be a story for fiction. This could be a more of a documentary style that's still kind of fiction or nonfiction, or I don't know. If you're looking at writing a story that's rooted in this reality, developing a character that shares your interests directly can be a way for you to get yourself out of this stale state where you're not really sure how to build a character. Now, as you branch out and you work on maybe your second story that you look to publish, or your third story, or you look to kind of build yourself up a repertoire of stories, and it could be for games, it could be for books, it could be for audiobooks, it could be for podcasts, it could be for any number of things, you really could start branching out into people you know. People like to latch on to things, and if your characters don't have something to latch on to make them likable, relatable, dislikable, or unlikable, I'm not really sure what the proper form is for that one, cling to real features of people, whether it be yourself or people you know, and people that you know fairly well. And you can even start to mash things up as long as you know that you're not going super contradictory. This person loves their phone, but hates computers. That's a little contradictory. Maybe that's the case. Maybe that is the case. But it's probably not going to be something that's super recurring. Usually people either really like technology or they really hate it. So keep that in mind. But develop characters who really kind of show who you are and put yourself into the characters, especially early on in your writing. Next up, if you're going to kind of build, you want to build the story in the lens of that person. So put yourself in the shoes of the character that you're writing as, and do your best to adopt the character you would assume that they have. And look at the world. Imagine the world. You can close your eyes and imagine the world that they are looking at and describe it. Describe it in as much or as little detail as you think that character would, and focus on details that they would. If I am playing the part of a gator hunter in Louisiana, I'm probably not too focused on maybe the telephone wires that are going along the side of the road. I might be more worried about the ripples in the water that I'm looking down at sitting from my rickety porch. I can hear the creaks in the boards underneath my chair as I rock back and forth. I've got 150 years of generational experience into this, and I've learned from my dad, who learned from his dad, who learned from his dad, who learned from his dad, who was killed by a gator, and maybe that's what the origin story is. But share the world in the detail like that. Maybe they're traveling, they're supposed to be a part of a police investigation where somebody thinks that somebody was killed by an alligator. Well, how do alligators hunt? Why would they attack a human being? Why would they be out of this specific eco zone or whatever? Why? And, you can start to paint a picture of the things in the car that the alligator hunter is paying attention to. Maybe the bushes or the familiarity of home distancing as they go further into the city that they don't like. Or maybe that they used to like, but they had to run away from for financial reasons. They're going to describe things differently than the preppy teenage girl that's just blowing bubblegum bubbles and walking down the street from a tropey 1980s movie. Like, it's going to be different. And it's worthwhile to explore the extremes, but then tone them back a little bit if it helps you get into that character. From there, think of skills. Gator hunter is going to have a rifle or a shotgun or a knife, probably. Their hands are probably going to be pretty torn up. They might be a little bit shaky, but they're going to be dang good at what they do. And make sure that if you're giving them something that's they're good at, it's going to be relevant to them. As a computer programmer, I'm not too good with horses. Now, some programmers might be, but I am not. It would not make sense, really, for me to be good at maybe building skyscrapers as a programmer, or architecting skyscrapers, when I don't even know, really, grades of steel. Wouldn't really make sense for me to be a professional programmer and a professional skyscraper architect, right? Give them skills that they are good at, but also, contrarily, make sure that you're giving them anti-skills. Make sure that their skills are matched by something that they are equally as strongly bad at. So if they're, 10 years into computer programming and they're really good on a scale of 1 to 10, they're probably a 9. They're probably a -9 at building skyscrapers or something like that. Make sure that you're balancing that out a little bit, because nobody has time for everything. Nobody is really Tony Stark. I don't care how much you love Elon Musk. So give them skills that match who they are as a person. From there, I've read in a number of articles throughout my time kind of researching this concept that you're supposed to make the character memorable. I think that that's a dangerous hole to drop into. I think that if you're looking at writing a protagonist or an antagonist, absolutely. There's something to be said for making an antagonist realistic. One of my favorite antagonists so far in a movie has been the dad from Shang-Chi. No spoilers, but that was one of my favorite villains because they were so realistic. They were so believable and relatable, honestly. I loved it. It felt so good. Shang-Chi and the Ten Rings from Marvel. That's memorable. And you want the protagonist and even the secondary and tertiary characters, make them memorable. Give them something to really pull the reader or the viewer in. and remember them. Why should I like this person? Why should I not like that person? But when you're talking about background characters, when you're talking about NPCs or non-relevant, you're talking about the shop owner of the fifth cafe on the street as the main characters, as the main characters are walking down to their car to get in to go to northern Seattle, it doesn't make sense for us to really know that much about that character. But it might be memorable that they have maybe a red carnation when the rest of their outfit is really dingy or gross or filthy, and they're running maybe a masonry shop, or maybe they're not a cafe and they're running some other thing. I don't know. But making every character memorable is going to create too much static. You need to offer some contrast. For instance, in my videos, you see me very nice and clearly most of the time. Fairly sharp, fairly contrasted, but my background is blurry. That's called depth of field. You want to create an artistic depth of field between what's important in your story and what's not. Describe at length and in detail across the whole story this character and the development of a character from immature, young, unknowing, naive to old and mature at the end of the book or end of the series or what have you. Because we need to know about the protagonist. We need to know about the relation to the antagonist. We need to know about their immediate friend group. But we don't need to know about the shopkeeper necessarily. We don't need to know about the guy that's patching the pavement in the road. Fuzz them out a bit. And the further back you go, the fuzzier it should get, the grayer it should get. In your peripheral vision, if you look at something, you can immediately tell in a ring color. You can immediately tell sharpness or contrast. You can describe something right in front of you very well. If you look at a center, or if you look at a point on your screen, anywhere on my screen, and you make a point not to look anywhere else in your room, you're looking at one specific point. For me right now, it's at you. It's at this little dot of a camera lens of mine. I can look at that, but I cannot look anywhere else with seeing color unless I look over there and I intentionally look over. It's all inferential. I know that there's red on that screen, but that's because I'm so used to that program being open. I know that this is white because it's black and white, but I couldn't tell you any other color on that web page. I have a web page pulled up there. I know that I've got colored RAM in my desktop off to that side, but I don't know what color is flashing right now. I just know that there's a color difference because there's an intensity variation. Make sure that your focal point is colored, it's sharp, and it's purposeful. But the rest can be blurry and gray with increasing intensity the further away from the protagonist, antagonist, and secondary and tertiary characters you are. Give it some depth of field, artistic depth of field, in your language. It takes time to build up the vocabulary to do so, but once you practice it a few times, you've got this. I got a chance to ask James Patterson, a famous writer, a few questions as part of a tour he was on and an interview session he was doing. It was really, really cool. And the one question that I had for him was, I so often run into writer's block. I don't know what to do. How do you get through writer's block as a professional with a huge repertoire of works behind you? And he said one of the most amazing things, and I may have said this on the channel before, but he said one of the most amazing things to me because it has rang true, whatever. It has continually kind of echoed in my ears throughout all aspects of my life. When you get stuck, when you get writer's block or a creative block, sit down and write anyway. Sit down and just bang away at a keyboard, whether it be on a typewriter, on your physical keyboard, on your phone, whatever. Write notes, write blurbs, write another short story, whatever. Just start writing down whatever comes to mind and don't throw it away. Save those little nuggets in another file. Save them on another piece of paper in a different drawer. Save them somewhere because you might want to use those somewhere in a different story or not. You might want to save them and use them in a different story or this story, or they might be garbage. It doesn't matter. Save them. Because eventually you're going to write 2 or 3 words that are going to be relevant to the story you're working on now. And you're going to sit there and think, oh, that gives me an idea. And that's going to drive you through the next maybe a couple of paragraphs, maybe a couple of pages, maybe a chapter or two, or maybe 2 sentences worth. But those are 2 productive sentences more than you would have if you just stopped writing, right? If you have a creative block, be creative in some other way, because it could inspire your creativity elsewhere, right? So anyway, back on track. Next up, you want to kind of give people a lens into the inner being of a character, depending, again, on their importance. Inner conflict. You don't want every decision to be so black and white that it's an easy decision. Oh, I'm definitely going to go down the right path because it's clearly the best one. Don't give somebody the God view. Give the reader an understanding of where it's right and where it's wrong, and where it gets muddy for the character. If you can show internal conflict really well in a character, it gives so much more development and build and substance to the soul of your character. And again, this is tertiary up through primary characters. That's going to help you really build this sense of relatability with your reader or your experience or your audience, so to speak. That's going to be so important. Internal conflict is something you face every day. It's something I face every day. It's something that everybody faces every day. And it might be a small conflict. It might be, I don't really feel like wearing a red shirt today. Maybe I should wear the green one. Or it's something, I just hit somebody's car and I don't have money to pay for court fees or insurance premium increases. Do I just drive off? Don't. It's illegal. Don't do that. But that internal conflict is there, right? That consideration could be there. It's a terrifying and frustrating thing, but you don't just run away from it. That internal conflict needs to exist because it's a part of us. It's part of being human. And I bet you it's part of being other kinds of animals as well. I'm sure we're not the only ones that have some sort of inner conflict. We just may be the only ones that recognize it that way. And finally, one way to really grip people, one way to pull people away from reality and shove them into your story and into your character's interests is to subvert expectations. That's right. Character twists. M. Night Shyamalan that stuff up. Why? Because it makes it interesting. It makes it so different. Well, I might be the guy. Oh, geez, I just honked like a goose. I'm getting over a chest cold a little bit, so forgive me. But make it twisty. M. Night Shyamalan that stuff, because it's going to make somebody that would normally say, I'm going to go to church this Sunday and I'm going to worship the Lord, and twist it up. No. Maybe every other Sunday I would do that, but no, this one's got me torn up. I need a little bit of life. I need a change up. I'm in a rut. 46 years old and haven't done anything meaningful with my life. I wonder how people rob banks. Well, that wouldn't be that hard. Just disable the cameras. How would you do that? And you build this character that goes from being this very good, upstanding, church-going individual to somebody that's seriously considering robbing a bank. Why? What? Why? You give them a little nugget. You give the readers or the audience just a little bit of that contention, that inner conflict of midlife crisis. I haven't done anything substantial with my life. All I did was this and that, and now what have I got to show for it? Nothing. So, or maybe they're post-divorce and they need something to fly off the handle and experience their rebellious stage from the high school years again. Who knows? I think you know. Give your characters, and each character can really, you can't really overdo subverting expectations. It's the key to drama, it's the key to comedy, it's the key to interest, because you lead people on a pattern they know. This is where tropes come in handy, is you make characters tropey, and then you twist the knife. You stab them, you twist. And you make them bleed the drama onto the page. Incredibly interesting, incredibly fun, and it leaves people wanting more. Practice it, draft it, redo it if necessary, but play with it. Because subverting expectation is going to be one of the ultimate tools in your toolbox. So, once again, I invite you to practice these at home. I invite you to take out a piece of paper, to start writing, or open up a Word document or a notepad or whatever program you're using, whatever kind of computer you have. I invite you to do that and write down something. Just build out a character. It doesn't even have to be something that you end up using, but build a character, describe it, and keep that. Take a look at that and edit it if you want to. Play around with it, morph it into what you want, because that will help you build better dialogue, which is something that I suck at. I am terrible at dialogue. But if I go back to point one, I gotta start mimicking the dialogue of my friends and my family, put that into my stories. So anyway, if you like this, you know the deal. Hit the like button. If you really like it, make sure the subscribe button is gray, not red. And if you really, really like it, double check the bell to make sure you got all notifications. And if the YouTube gods shine down upon you and me both, you may just see the notification when this video goes up. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, have a good one.